reflection in me.
Good afternoon, everyone. That was not my hype song, by the way. So judge away, but that was not my hype song. The title of this session is A Manager's Perspective on Diversity, Pay, Equity, and Inclusion. And what that means is that I am not from the human resources track. I'm not part of a diversity and inclusion team at any of the companies I've worked for. I'm a product leader, a product management leader, and I have been for many years. So what you get in this session is likely to be the terminology that's not perfect, that's not ideal for the trade that many of you may be in, or many of the other speakers were. So forgive me for that. It's very probable that I'll offend a few of you during this presentation, so stay tuned for that. You can judge me all you want. I'd love to take questions at the end because this is my story. And as many of the other speakers said, you form your opinions and you form who you are as a manager on the basis of the experiences that you've had. And so I want to dig deep into the stories that have framed me, the way in which I approach people leadership, and some of the successes we've had on the topics of diversity, pay equity, and inclusion. Everybody with me? Fair? Great. Okay, so a little bit about me. This unusual logo stands for Area 120. This is a division of Google. That's an incubator team. So I work with about 5 other people, and we incubate new concepts from the ground up on the back of Google's current market position of products they have in market, say Gmail, YouTube, search, etc. Now, I've worked at a lot of different companies, and so one I'm going to go deep on today is my time at Tesla. Everyone familiar with Tesla? Anyone own a Tesla, drive a Tesla? Okay. So I led digital at Tesla in 2017 through to about 3 months ago. And as many of you know from the news, it's an interesting company. It's an iconic founder. And there's a lot of interesting stories that come out that are from the media side. And I'm going to tell you some of my stories from within. Now, there's many other companies that I've worked for. So these are various brands that you're probably familiar with. StubHub, NBC News Digital, Athena Health, Microsoft, Escapia was acquired by HomeAway, and Disney, as well as ESPN. I was a people leader at 6 out of 8 of these companies. So my perspective is formed from many different organizations across different cities, Seattle, Los Angeles, Boston, and the Bay Area as well. So hopefully you get some perspective that my time at these various companies and the various sizes and industries in these companies will give you some information about how I framed my thought process. So with that, I want to start off with a video. If we can play the video, please.
Thank you.
Is the sound working?
Only $1,273 after taxes.
Wait, you make $1,273?
Yeah, what do you make?
78% of that? But that's so weird because we have the same job. That's not fair. Unless.
Allison, I feel like you're not giving this job 100%.
You're right. I'm giving it about 78%. Oh, and it's already 4:45, so I'm in overtime. Wouldn't want to cost you any extra money.
Okay, but I need you to come in this weekend.
That is a good one, Mike. I'll see ya.
It's hard to falter perspective on that. So again, not being from the topics in human resources, diversity, and inclusion, me as a people manager simply recognize this from various things. I'm married, I have a daughter, I have a sister, I have a mother, and hear the stories from them from time to time. And so I did some quick research. How pervasive is this problem? And so when you go to Google search and you start looking around, you come across images that resemble this, 79 cents to the dollar. I'm sure everyone's familiar with this in this room. I'm sure it's been covered over the last 2 days. You continue onward, and you see other charts that show the male side of the bar graph being taller than the female side, and so on and so forth. And this is what I came across pervasively across my limited research as a people manager, saying, I've got to do something about this. Now, we'll come back to pay in just a minute. I want to talk about the time that I had at Tesla. So I joined Tesla at a very tumultuous time. Not that today is not tumultuous, honestly, but at that time it was particularly tumultuous. And so I want to put you in my shoes of what I inherited. Okay, and if you can wrap your head around that, you're going to step into the role of head of digital for Tesla. Now, what does digital mean? This is the retail stores have interactive touchscreens, the buying experience on mobile web and desktop, the mobile app to manage your vehicle, the temperature, the windows, and so on, and the touchscreen display in the vehicle itself for managing your supercharging and all the other things that come with. That's a pretty intense job, and I got to work with Elon Musk, among other people. And so when you inherit this area, you say, what do we need to do here? And so I inherited 8 people as part of this digital product management team, and I needed to grow the team quickly. Now I'm going to show you a quick video about Elon Musk, one of his commencement speeches. So I'm going to cue the video, and if we can have the sound, please.
If you're creating a company or if you're joining a company, the most important thing is to attract great people. So either join a group that's amazing, that you really respect, or if you're building a company, you've got to gather great people. I mean, all a company is a group of people that have gathered together to create a product or service. And so depending upon how talented and hardworking that group is, and the degree to which they are focused cohesively in a good direction, that will determine the success of the company.
So what you notice there is Elon Musk is wonderful. I enjoyed and learned more than I have from anyone else in the world than from Elon during the time I was there. He's phenomenal at certain things, and we need him to be phenomenal at those things for the health of the planet. There's other things that he entrusts with other people on the team, namely people management. So one of the things I inherited was a complete lack of structure whatsoever. And in the course of inheriting that team of 8 people, needing to grow it to something, 5 or 6 times the size of that, I learned and realized that none of these people had a job description. None of them knew what they were doing. They would just do stuff all day long, whatever Elon said, frankly. And I realized that that is a recipe for failure when it comes to pay equity and then subsequent topics like diversity and inclusion and hiring practices. Because if you don't know what your job is, how do you know who to hire, how to hire for those people? You end up picking people because they're the next one in line in the interview process. So I thought to put structure in place. Now this next slide is intentionally designed for you to not read the content. Okay, because I want to show the enormity of the structure that I put in place. But I'm going to walk through one example with you, and then I'll come back to showing the full enormity. So as you can see with this slide, again, not for you to read this. On the far left are competencies of a product manager. I thought with a structured mind, let me pick out what are the competencies of a product manager, and then let me identify all the respective responsibilities that each person would have depending on their level in the organization. What this did is it created an objective view of what an individual should do depending on their level as a product manager. And I didn't realize I was going to be solving problems around diversity, pay equity, and inclusion in the course of this. But this is just putting structure in place to figure out how should people operate each day. So let's take one example. This is one of those 11 competencies that was on that previous chart. Technical acumen. So this is one thing that a product manager should do. So here's my 140-character description of it. It's the recognition of technical implications in product decisions. Now, what I did is I put together what each level of the organization should be responsible for in the context of technical acumen. So you see the P3 there. Looks for opportunities to improve business results via technical decisions in partnership with technical peers. Sounds pretty good. Now, I didn't exclude myself from this, so I put the executive track on there as well. I wanted to make sure the organization had a clear idea of what was expected of them in this job classification. So in the course of putting together this full enormity of competencies, we started to chip away at the objective view of an individual. Now, what I realized was that the compensation delta between males and females on the team was pretty stark. We're going to come back to compensation in just a minute. Making balance a priority was also very integral to me. My time at Athena Health was very polarizing. We had a founder and a CEO who was, I guess the best way to put it is he would say whatever he believed whenever he believed it without a filter. And so there was an uproar amongst the company, and the term unconscious bias came up. And so what I learned quite a bit about was this idea of subtle biases. And we heard that from the previous speaker, among others. And I'm sure this is very familiar to you, but it was not familiar to me as a manager in product management land. It's certainly familiar to all of you. So you get references through your daily course of action that somehow isolate an individual from another. You see here it says, new rule, hi guys. Never say this unless you're in front of a group of people named Guy. You have emails that start with Uber team, hey guys. All right. You have other articles from females saying, let's stop calling everyone guys. It's demeaning. Recruiter sends a message to someone, what am I looking for? Smart guys. You get the drift, right? This is from the Military Veterans Association, and circled in red if you can't see it. It says veterans and or their widows, veterans and their wives. Couldn't? Of course, you know the rest of it. Right? Now, it's built into the system. Now, I'm not making judgments on political affiliations here, but if you look at, sorry, we're going to get into political affiliations just one second. If you look at a Google search for best candidates, this is a Shutterstock search for best candidates. You can make your judgments as to what you see on this slide. This is throughout. This is our daily activities of products. This is our Congress, the 116th Congress. I'm just going to highlight something. Do we notice anything? Of course we do. Right? This is around us everywhere we go. Now, I had a really interesting realization as well as a people manager at Tesla. There was a moment in time when I knew I was going to face attrition. I knew there was going to be at least 3 or 4 people from my team who were going to leave in the next couple months. And I had open headcount. So now I had a decision to make. How do I hire the right people, anticipating that someone on the team is going to be leaving at some point in the next 3 months? So I took a moment and just took a pause moment and said, well, what if I use this opportunity to hire someone who's going to take a little bit longer to arrive at our company? Let's say a college grad, someone who hasn't graduated yet. And so I need 3 months for them to finish off and tour Europe and then come on back. Or a visa holder. Everyone got through the process of onboarding someone who's gone through the visa process? Not quick. It's not terribly quick. It was, I thought it was going to be 2 months. It turned out it was 5 months. Now, it was seizing the moment of the opportunity there that says attrition is likely to happen, but rather than overstaff and then have people unhappy that they don't have enough work, you can hire someone who you anticipate for the future. Now, I caught a loophole, honestly. This is just me speaking honestly. We did layoffs in between the time when those people arrived, and those people weren't counted towards the layoffs. It was beautiful. I didn't have it calculated as my layoff attrition plan. So I had 2 additional hires starting after these layoffs that took place at Tesla. My point is that if you look at your window of hiring, the time period in which you're trying to bring people on, if you can afford that time of onboarding, you might consider hiring someone whom you can handle that lead time. In this case, visa holders. So I'm going to show you a quick video here from our friend Steve Jobs. Cue the video and audio.
Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference.
So my dots connecting moment came about a month before I departed Tesla. We were going through performance reviews, and I looked at where my team had arrived some 1.5 years later after I inherited them. Remember I said I started with a team of 8 people. And connecting the dots, what I realized over that roughly 1.5 year period was that some of the practices that we put in motion, namely identifying the objective view of what a product manager's responsibilities were, removing the term guys, or preventing people from being interrupted when they were speaking in a meeting. Those all had an impact. And what happened was word got around. So of the 8 people on the team, there were 2 females. They said something to other people of the company. They were asked questions. How is your new manager when I joined? What's it like? Is this person a decent person? And those two people would tell stories about, it's great, he doesn't let me get cut off by other people in meetings anymore. He's been attending to our pay gap, and I'll tell you about that in just a minute. He's focused on making sure that we have a diverse team going forward. What I realized, connecting the dots going backwards, was that as we grew our team, the candidate pool was representative of males and females almost equally. Then focusing on international, I was able to make it diverse as well. So now, looking at the end state after those 8 people were onboarded, let's take a look at some of the numbers. 8 people to 43, that's a 5.4x increase over that duration. That's about a year and a half. So think about that, 43 total people. Now, if it was 2 of 8 females, anyone want to guess what it was in November 2017? Out of 43 people, how many males, how many females? 20 to 23? Who said that? Which direction? 23 female, 20 male. The mathematician in the room, what's the percentage? 53.4% female. Compensation in August 2017. By the way, that should say November 2018 on the right. A year later, a year and a half later. Compensation, 16% in favor of the males, 138K. What's your guess? 1% in favor of the females, a year and a half later. And 0% international, 0 of the 8. Okay, 14% international, a year and a half later. Now again, I'm a product leader. I was not out to solve this problem. I was not focused on this saying, the number one thing I'm gonna be known for after leaving Tesla was this, okay? That wasn't what I walked in saying and doing. But we set in motion a bunch of principles, objective job descriptions, taking to the compensation team the delta that existed between males and females. We started the team on the right basis at the outset. I didn't look at this for a year and a half. A year and a half later, looked at it 1 month before I left because we were doing performance reviews and found that this was the data. And so my learning was that it was based off of setting the right principles at the right time. Now, I didn't have an HR leadership group or a diversity inclusion team. I'm sure those roles existed, but nobody came knocking on my door saying, let's go do this. This was just doing the right thing at the right time with the spot that I had in the company that I was with. Now, I want to talk about a different form of diversity. All right, I said I was going to offend some people, so let's see what happens here. Anyone know what these schools have in common? I heard expensive, got one so far. What else? Admission scandal. Okay. How many here have went to one of these schools? I'm going to guess about 5 to 10% of the room. So I am not trying to offend any of you. I didn't go to any of these schools, okay? I'll show you my schools. Anyone know Cal State Northridge? A couple people, 2 or 3. Anyone know anything about Cal State Northridge or know much about it? It's in LA, okay? Northridge earthquake, anyone remember? Okay. It's also in the shadow of a couple of other schools, right? And the shadow is a real thing. I was an intern during my junior year at the Walt Disney Company. Okay, intern. I finished up my internship at Walt Disney Company and went back to the Career Center at Cal State Northridge and said, I want to work in Hollywood. This is the best thing ever. How can this Career Center help me get a job somewhere in Hollywood after I had this wonderful internship at Disney? The person looked at me and said, I am so sorry to be the one to tell you this, but none of the entertainment studios recruit from Cal State Northridge, so you ought to go apply at AAA, Allstate, and Farmers Insurance. Kind of interesting because I look at some of my colleagues from that time, 96, 97, from Cal State Northridge, and many of them went to AAA, Farmers, and Allstate. I went to grad school at Boston University. Anyone from Boston, BU? Great. So similarly, in the shadow of, a couple of other schools. And I was graduating at the time that the economy was at a low point in 2003. Now, I was lucky because I got a great job at Microsoft at the time, but a lot of my classmates didn't. And schools, were not top tier. We're not getting all the best companies recruiting from them. So if you're sensing a chip on my shoulder, it comes from the fact that things weren't handed to me from any of my schools and my pedigree. And I'm offended at the college cheating scandal, honestly, that people made it into schools who weren't qualified to be in those schools. So I'm closely watching this story unfold. Now, what happens when you get a kid who's got a chip on his shoulder, who grows up having to fight for everything that he's going to get? What happens? You get creativity. And I've noticed that. I've noticed that about a lot of my peers, a lot of my classmates. There's creativity because you got to find a way. And so even still, I might have landed at Google and worked at Tesla, and these are great companies, but I'm not focused on hiring people exclusively from top-tier schools. Okay? I'm looking for anybody. I'm looking for the people who are hungry, who will find a way, who will fight through adversity, who will make it through the toughest times at 2 a.m. in a conference room with Elon Musk on a Sunday night or Monday morning. I need those people who will fight through that. Now, what that did for me is a couple of things. One, I find ways to differentiate myself. I recently published a book called The Team Decision Matrix in Product Management. You can find it on Amazon if you'd like. Two, I run a mutual fund on mobile commerce. I believe I can beat the stock market, and I'm beating it by about 40 points right now at 130% return to date. Three, I started a water conservation business. Okay, I'm capturing air conditioning condensation and storing it for irrigation purposes. This looks a lot like the Tesla Powerwall, if anyone knows what that is. It's the exact same dimensions, frankly. And four, this is the most unlikely thing that you would think of hearing on this stage from me, maybe today. I've recently started producing rap music. Silicon Beats is the brand, and what I'm doing is taking my chip that's on my shoulder on the technology world that is spending time and effort on things that are not the most significant things to be spending time on. No offense to anyone at Snapchat, but the dog filters, come on. Do we need dog filters in this world when there's homeless people on the street? Right? Do we need self-lacing shoes from Nike? These were sent to me from Nike, by the way, after I made fun of it in my songs. I had to wear them. They're expensive, so I tried it. Right? So I take tech news that offends me, that we're spending time and energy creating, and I put it into music in hopes that somewhere it kicks, and somehow we realize we should be spending our time and energies on things that actually change the world. So with that, unless you stand for something, you don't stand for anything. I'm happy to take questions, especially if I offended you at some point.
I have a question over here. Your left.
Yes, thank you.
I know you said that you didn't set out to really do the diversity work, but you actually did achieve some great accomplishments. I'm curious, after that success, how have you leveraged that, and how have you influenced others who are not in a D&I role or an HR role to accidentally achieve what you've done too?
Wow, that's an awesome question. So I would say, to be honest, I can do more. First is getting the story out, like I did today. Second is the hiring practices that I employ at Google still continue to be emblematic of what I did, what I employed at Tesla. Three, I look for any opportunity to highlight the topic. Now, this is a really delicate topic for me, honestly, this whole topic of diversity and inclusion, because it could sound very self-serving to stand up here and say, I did all this is all my wonderful work, you should think highly of me. That's not the case. This wasn't the intention to begin with. So I haven't quite figured that out, right? What's the right way to continue to convey that message? So I thought, by coming to speak to this audience would be a great starting point to get that message out and say, it can be done from the manager's level. right? But it has to be within the interest of the person to say, let's go solve this problem, let's make the world different.
I guess that wasn't so much a question as an invitation for you to go influence the rest of your peer managers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm happy to speak in any arena that you think is appropriate, but yes, I'll certainly take and do my part to speak to my peer managers. Other questions? Yes.
Hi, can you hear? Oh, perfect. Yeah. Hi, my name is Samya Prakash, and I really thoroughly enjoyed your presentation. My question for you is, I am 1 year into my full-time role. I just graduated from university. And my question for you is, for someone who's new in the professional field and basically new to the full-time role, when I notice verbiage and language that's suggestive, and maybe not in a, crazy, outlandish way, but something like, hey guys, or things like that. What is some advice to addressing those things, especially to senior leaders? Being the new one in the room, being the young one in the room, sometimes I feel a little disheartened because of my age, but not necessarily because anyone's saying so, but just maybe something that it might be in my own head. But what's some advice to addressing those things?
It's a tough spot that you're in because you don't want to go too far to where you alienate yourself amongst your peers, and I would say it once. I would say it very timely, and see what kind of reaction you get, and that might give you then the information to go to the next step. I'm thinking about a person on my team currently who said, "Can't we just get a guy to code this and do this thing?" And I said, or a girl. And at first it lightened the mood, right, because they realized their moment. And it changed the terminology. Now, I don't think it solved the problem pervasively, but it was just my way of trying to solve it in that particular moment. I think you could probably try something like that and see what kind of reaction you get, what kind of response. But I think this room would probably be a better audience to figure out the answer to that.
Thank you.
Other questions? I got 2 minutes and 49 seconds.
Right here.
Yeah.
Right here.
Okay, so I have 2 questions for you. First of all, it doesn't sound like you use the good old guy information that somebody probably tried to force you out sometime. You use common sense to hire people. Can you speak a little bit to that? Yeah, I look for the soft skills, I guess was what they call it. So the ones, the people who are real and can look at a problem and solve it. I want somebody who will take a question that I ask and say, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll find out and get back to you. And if you ask questions that lead themselves towards somebody saying, I don't know that, you get a real person. So I did this 15 years ago. I'd ask, somebody what's the last movie they saw, and usually they could answer it. They saw, the X-Men, the recent X-Men movie. They say, who directed it? And they're fumbling for an answer. They're trying to figure out what the answer is, when I really just want them to look me in the eye and say, I don't know that. But if it matters to you, I'll go find out. So that's a form of answering your question, that I'm looking for things that are outside the norm, like what did you do? What are you most proud of? Tell me about a time when you faced adversity. It's looking for those things that are the problem solvers, I'll go figure it out more than anything else. So it's really about a series of questions. I'm happy to talk to you about it offline, that basically just tries to get to a real conversation instead of the templatized version of an interview. Okay, cool.
You had a second question?
Yeah, second question. Do you drive a Tesla?
Yeah, I do. Saving the planet, 1 mile at a time. Yes, I see a hand just over here.
I've got a question. Right here?
Yeah, I see. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, my question is, was your sensitivity heightened because of the experience of not going to UCLA in terms of...
Sorry, ma'am, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was your approach and your sensitivity heightened because of the experience of not going to UCLA and being told that your opportunities were foreclosed because you didn't go to UCLA when you came out of school?
You were damn right. You were damn right. So now keep in mind, I mentioned the Northridge earthquake. So nearly everything was taken away in an earthquake of that magnitude. I was living maybe about 4 miles from the epicenter. And so all of your typical approaches to college were gone. Buildings were destroyed. Any form of campus life was gone. So you had to find a way. And it led me to a phrase that I currently believe in and will forever believe in, which is there are two types of people in the world. Just two types. There are those who let it happen and those who make it happen. Which one are you? Right? The earthquake, Northridge, shadows of other schools, you become a person who has to make it happen. Thank you very much.